So if they're buying milk from the farm that it's produced on, they're going to leave there and never want to drink it again. Dave had an experience with this recently with getting some raw dairy in Georgia. It's happened to me every time. I always go there thinking that I'm going to see an amazing, immaculate place, and I leave disappointed and afraid to recommend it. Secondly, except when I visited Hendrick's Farm and Dairy. And I just said, we got to do this in 6 years. I said 6 months, but it took 6 years. The other side is, go see a large industrial organic, name any of the 3 major brands that's out there, and you see something probably 5 times bigger than this in a downtown with a bunch of tanks and technology and no grass, no cows, no nothing, and you realize that they're getting things shipped in from hundreds of farms, hundreds of miles, and it's all getting ultra heat treated. And one of the reasons is because they have a lot of variables. This process, from the cow's uniqueness, and every generation, cream and peaches might be the only calves of their kind right now, of the genetics and the non-beta casein A1 producing. We don't know that there are any out there. There may be some that have been produced accidentally, unintentionally, but these are the only ones we know of. And then this facility and what we're doing truly is one of a kind. And I know that in direct sales, one of a kind exclusive is key, but it's become cliche. This is true, it's real. And how do we explain it better? We all have to figure that out. But at the end of the day, part of this, and I say this to salespeople at Garden of Life, the conviction that we have in our nonverbal communication and in our relentless approach to getting this across is the key. So yes, I can't get everybody here, but I've got you here, and you have to represent us with what's here, and they have to understand, no, you don't understand, this isn't the same. And for all the reasons, and if someone doesn't want to think about where their food comes from, you have work to do. If someone tries to defend their local raw milk co-op that is grass-fed, go to see what they're doing in the parlor. They're eating grain right in the parlor. I went to a grass-fed dairy. 50% of the cow's diet, according to records, was grain, 19 pounds a day. We talked to 100% grass-fed dairy, 100%. They feed 10 pounds a day of non-grass, of grain hulls and molasses. They asked us why don't we say 100% green-fed? I said because we have mineral that is available with various clays and sometimes sea vegetables and sometimes salt. So if they consume that in a day, it might be 99.8, but it's not 100. 100's 100. And so when someone's saying they're 100% grass-fed, and then I said, well, what about the non-fat dry milk that you add as a thickener? Is that grass-fed? No. So it's hard to fully communicate the differences that we have, but the conviction and the results are what's going to do it. And so we want to try to arm you with that information, but you have to first believe that this is the only product like this out there. And then I could go into the probiotic cultures, and it truly is amazing. And we've tried to create a value for this. People say, well, it's twice as much as organic yogurt, but it costs us 10 times. We produce 5 times less milk. Our cattle walk more, they eat more grass. So it's something that we need to be able to get across. The Suero is different because no one can compare it to anything. We try to compare it to coconut water and kombucha, but Suero Gold is the only product of its kind in the world. There are people that consume whey straight from cheese, but it's not cultured. There's 2 whey beverages, one in Iceland and one in Switzerland, but Suero is the only Suero out there.
I think more important than the price is really what it's offering to those that are consuming it. So if you value your nutrition, you will pay the extra money because proportionately you are being gypped by thinking you're buying something that maybe
But they have to know.
And obviously that is our job.
Stonyfield stands up there and is the hero, but at the end of the day, the conventional and organic yogurts, you can use, I think, 30% water, and still call it yogurt. You can use thickeners.
We'll have nothing but beyond organic dairy in our home. I mean, honestly, because really, we're not even eating any meat anywhere else.
Right.
I mean, we are fully beyond organic. Our kids are.
Waiting for the butter, man.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
And the heavy cream.
Hey, tell me about the cultures.
There's 3 different culture steps. One of them uses 2 probiotics, another uses 1 probiotic, and the other uses 32.
Cool, start over.
And
All right.
there are 3 culturing steps to Amasi, and there's 2 to Suero. In addition to the cultures that are in the product. Now remember, when you do low temperature pasteurization, the reason it lasts a shorter time is because the bacteria break it down quicker. Those bacteria that break the milk down also go into our body and do unique things. Those are the very ones we need. So you've got a starting base. Then we add 3 different groups of cultures. There's actually, I would guess, 7 genera of organisms, aerobic and anaerobic. Genera is the plural of genus, so there's genus and there's species. So Lactobacillus is the genus, Acidophilus is the species. So there are at least 7 genera. There's aerobic, which means oxygen loving. There's anaerobic. Some are yeasts, some are molds, some are fungi, some are bacteria. And each phase we add a different organism. Some are completely heat tolerant, some are varying stages of tolerance. We don't list the organisms because some of them have never been used before or listed in a probiotic food, but this is from a culture that's been handed down for essentially thousands of years, and it's intact and it's in itself a living organism. So I don't want to get more specific than that because some of the organisms people haven't heard of and they might have an opinion on, but the diversity of cultures is very unique and doesn't happen anywhere. The reason we need aerobic and anaerobic microorganisms when we mimic the mas or Amasi process in traditional African production, they use a gourd, which is a dried gourd called a calabash. They put a little grain in to season it, then they put milk in, and it's exposed to aerobic organisms from the air, including yeasts, and then they continue to reuse the seasoned gourd by putting new batches in, and that's what accumulates the diversity of organisms. So if we had the yogurt cultures, which there's 2 yogurt cultures, Bulgaricus and Thermophilus, traditionally, it's yogurt.
Yeah.
But what makes it Amasi is the cattle genetics, because Amasi is produced from non-beta-casein A1 animals. They're only grass. The Maasai don't feed grain to their cattle. And, of course, the culture and the processing. So that's what makes it Amasi. When someone says, oh, well, I really like your kefir, it's not kefir. Kefir's good. It could be good. I mean, when you make it at home and if you had milk that was free of beta-casein A1 and it was only grass. But when it comes to food, majoring on the minors is important. How much beta-casein A1 is in kefir? Probably milligram amounts. How much gluten is in grain? Milligram amounts. I mean, do you realize gluten's a protein? So if you have wheat bread or white bread that has 1 gram of protein, gluten is a very small portion of 1 gram, but it makes a major difference in the negative. And so we believe majoring in the minor is critical here. The Suero Vive has 2 groups of cultures in it. Less diversity, but there's a reason for that because the processing of Suero is specific to the pH, and certain cultures drive the pH lower than others. Also, I've said this for years, probiotics are not about the number of cells. The probiotics we get in stores are pretty much suspended or freeze-dried, isolated cultures that have been removed from the media they grew in. Now, Garden of Life is different. We have whole food probiotics, and we have taken kefir and yogurt cultures and fruits and vegetables to surround it with food, the best we can in a capsule. But when it comes to a probiotic food, there are bioactive substances that are known and unknown. For example, organic acids like lactic acid actually retards the growth of microorganisms. So if you put germs in Suero Gold, it's not going to grow very well because the organic acid, the lactic acid, retards the growth of germs. It disarms them. And then the probiotics, when they're inside you, create additional elements to destroy germs. Probiotics, people say, eat bad germs. They don't. They shoot them. And someone once said that the organic acids and the enzymes that probiotics create are their teeth. So if you think about it, they're not eating bad germs like a Pac-Man. They're shooting them. They're secreting things. But it's not enough to just take organisms and hope that they can recreate their environment. Think about it this way. For those of us who were on the tour to the North Ranches, there was a baby fawn that was this big. None of us, we thought it was a rabbit, then we thought it was a coyote, but it was a baby fawn. She has to go, if her mom is not around, she has to go and recreate her entire life. Very difficult. When you take a probiotic in maltodextrin or an isolated form and put it in your gut, it's like that fawn that has no mother. They have to somehow recreate their environment. When you consume a cultured beverage or a cultured food, like Amasi and Swear of Eve, the probiotics are at home already. They've got food, they've got shelter, and then they can continue to recreate what you're already consuming. And this is, something that probably you may not want to post, or not all of you might be interested in learning about, but we have some colon therapists that are doing
So I'm Jordan Rubin, and this is
where we've got colon therapists that are doing Swero Gold colonics and enemas, because the lactic acid and the organic acids actually pull waste matter off the walls of the gut. There was a book written about the consumption of whey. Now this was heated, powdered whey, non-cultured, and he talked about taking it orally and then the other way to bring waste matter out of it. I'm not going to be a test subject for that. I prefer the one-way swirl cleanse. If you want to do a 360-degree swirl cleanse, I'll leave that up to you. But